about it. This is the Wikstrand. So it was the late 90s and The Devil's Advocate came out. It was not a huge hit at the box office, proving that Keanu Reeves had been demoted from, you know, the main event status in Hollywood and was now struggling in the upper mid-card at best and couldn't really sell any tickets on his own merit, and neither could really Al Pacino. The critics, well, they didn't like this movie either, and calling this a weird, you know, copy of The Firm. We'll get to that comparison in a second. And most people who saw it was a little bit, I didn't like this movie, especially not the ending. I was not one of them, and when I saw this movie the first time, I loved the ending so much, and I loved the entire movie so much. It was one of my favorite movies of the year. And then, you know, I had to fight people, you know, to tell them that this movie is actually really, really good. And I've seen this movie a number of times over the years. I think that the last time I saw it and really cementing what this movie was and how good it was like the 16th or 17th time or something like that. So I've seen this movie a lot of times, and I can say this now. The Devil's Advocate is one of my favorite movies from the late 90s and one of the best movies from the fantastic movie years of 1997, but it has something that is even better. It has one of my top 10 favorite endings of all time. Every time I see it, I just have the same visceral reaction to the whole thing. I want to stand up and I want to go, yes! It is such a fantastic movie, and I'll fight anybody who disagrees with me on that one. But what is The Devil's Advocate about, and why has it somehow survived, at least for me, all of these years? That's what we're gonna find out. Today it's time to take a look at this sort of slightly forgotten 90s gem. This is The Devil's Advocate. Lomax, played by Keanu Reeves, is a lawyer working in Florida. He's on somewhat of a Goldberg level streak of wins. He seems to be able to win even the most unwinnable cases and seems to be very good at picking out a jury and seems to know what people think and what they desire and stuff like that. Recently, he has won yet another seemingly unwinnable case, the Gettys case. We'll get to that a little bit further down the line also. And, you know, they're hanging out in this bar and celebrating that, you know, they were able to get this guy off the hook and stuff like that, and he's approached by a guy from a law firm in New York offering him to come up and, you know, select a jury for them, because, you know, the word of mouth is spreading, you know, about Kevin Lomax, and maybe he's going to be recruited by them. So he goes up there together with Marianne, played by Charlize Theron, and, you know, selects a jury for them. And surprisingly enough, despite the outcome of this case seems to be a slam dunk, he wins yet again, and now he's offered a job by the, you know, the hotshot of the law firm, John Milton, played by Al Pacino. We will also get to him in a second. The thing is that this job comes with a lot of perks. Not only is the salary enormously high, they also get this enormously amazing apartment, you know, overlooking the Central Park and stuff like that. Life seems to be very good for Kevin Lomax, but the job will also take some toll on him, because he's gonna put in a lot of hours in the cases he's going to get. The first case, you know, the Moriarty case with Delroy Lindo and the dead goat thing. This and, you know, the upcoming thing with the Cullen murders, played by Craig T. Nelson in a fantastic role, will also take up a lot of time for him. And Marianne at the same time is feeling lonely, and she's having these nightmarish visions and stuff like that. And he thinks that, you know, she's just having problems adjusting to their new life here in New York. And their marriage, which seems to be the most stable things, is slowly, you know, crumbling, and the relationship is on quite rocky ground, because not only is she left alone because, you know, he's working so much, but it is also the fact that he's also, you know, flirting a little bit too much with his mysterious and alluring colleague Christabel, played by Connie Nielsen. So Keanu Reeves, you have a early 20s Charlize Theron and a mid-30s Connie Nielsen? I don't know, have a menage a trois. So is New York slowly corrupting Kevin Lomax, or has he been corrupted all along? Because how is it that he can win these seemingly unwinnable cases? And is he actually working for a actual law firm run by decent stand-up people? Because Eddie Barzoom, played by Jeffrey Jones, seems to, be into some shady stuff. And who exactly is John Milton, and why has he sort of, picked him to, become an important guy in this law firm? That's what this movie is about, at least on the surface. And then the movie just skyrockets towards cinematic amazingness. One thing that we have to talk about before we go any further, and that is the casting of this movie is fucking amazing. If John Milton, Marianne and Kevin Lomax would not have been played by Keanu Reeves, Charlize Theron and Al Pacino, this probably wouldn't have been as good as it is now. Keanu Reeves in this movie, it is one of my favorite performances with him. He's just so fucking good as this nice but ultimately kind of egotistical and very, very ambitious lawyer, and sometimes, in his big outbursts, I don't lose cases, I win them! You see an entirely new side of Keanu Reeves, and Charlize Theron may be the best actresses of all time, and this is one of her first most amazing performances. She's better than Meryl Streep, fight me about it. But now we're going to have to talk about Al Pacino, because Al Pacino in this movie puts on one of my favorite performances of all time. It is the perfect blend of animal masculinity and weird over-the-top silliness, which somehow marriage into this totally bonkers but somehow enormously fun performances. I love him so much in this movie, and his fantastic outburst towards the end. Here's an absentee landlord! We're coming out! Guns blazing! And I can understand if some people just think that it is too silly and too over the top, and that, it took away some of the excitement and the suspense of this movie. But I will rather take this silly, over the top, amazing performance rather than, some, bozo just, doing this in the serious, unthreatening and shouty ways. The Devil's Advocate is a weird cocktail of courtroom drama, supernatural horror movie and conspiracy thriller. And somehow they can put these three things together and make it work. Not only make it work, make it flourish. Because this movie, despite being 2.5 hours, there was hardly a dull moment in this entire movie. 2.5 hours just whooshes by. It almost feels like a miniseries that has been squeezed into these 2.5 hours. One of the few criticisms I have with this movie is the fact that it could have been even longer, because I felt that, the ending was ever so slightly rushed, but we'll get to that also in a second. So we have fantastic performances, and we have this suspense that just ramps up all the time. And the fact is that things that, didn't feel to matter in the beginning, it comes back to haunt this movie. Especially, the Get This case that, Keanu Reeves never can quite get out of his head. There was something about that case that he felt was wrong. And the longer this movie goes, the more, the suspense and the drama and the risks seem to be ramping up, and the movie seems to be descending into more and more of something completely different. But this is where the movie is so smart, because everything that happens in this movie can be explained away towards that we don't exactly know what's going on there. Because especially, as I said, with the Charlize Theron thing, because she is, almost having a mental breakdown, and she believes that she sees demons and stuff like that. But all of these things and horrible nightmares and stuff like that can be explained away towards that, well, she's just under a lot of pressure and stuff like that. And there is also a lot of very subtle things that is done in this movie that is so clever. I'm going to explain more of that in the extended review that I'm going to have to do with this movie, that just makes this movie to such a fantastic experience. And after tragedy has struck and we are left with an absolute bombshell of a twist that I didn't see coming a million miles away, but probably a lot of other people did, we come to the section of the movie which I would like to call the watershed moment. Because this is where you will either love this movie even more, or maybe even walk away saying, well, this has now officially jumped the shark. The explanation bit, the explanation of what is exactly going on here. This is also where most of the absolute over-the-top awesomeness comes in, and then they just ramp things up even more. To this point, when I saw this movie the first time, I was mesmerized. I couldn't take my eyes off the whole thing. It was just, oh my god. And then they just rise up to this amazing peak, and I said, Jesus Christ, I love this movie so much. And then the movie fucking shits the bed. When I saw this the first time, I felt this ice lump inside of me, and I was like, you have screwed me out of one of the most awesome endings of all time. You had the perfect ending right there. It was right there. I said, Taylor Hackford, I'm gonna hunt you down, and I'm going to kill you. I'm gonna nail your ball to a step stool and ask you to, fix this fucking ending. But just when I was imagining, the nailing of the balls things, the step stools and stuff like that, then all of a sudden, they did something else. And this something else was so fucking good and was so amazing that I love this. I have seen versions of this ending in other forms, but this is the only time that I thought that it actually worked. And it was so good that I am totally okay with that they did what I hated the most, but they also simultaneously didn't. And when the credits started rolling and I heard that song, that made me almost jump out of my seat and applaud, because it was perfect. I've never seen anything done to such perfection, after they have already, done something that I thought was this amazing shark jumping. So, should you see The Devil's Advocate? The answer to that is, of course, yes. This is a fantastic movie. Every time I see it, it just feels like it's getting a little bit better. And I think now, when 26 years or whatever has passed since it has been released, I think that this is a sort of modern classic that no one ever talks about. But as I've understood it, it has garnered a sort of renaissance because of, the return to main event status for one Keanu Reeves. And people are starting to rediscover this movie. That is at least the feeling I'm getting. So this is a very suspenseful, very dramatic, very well made and extremely well shot movie. Often it's said that New York is the coolest movie city in the world. In this movie, I've never seen New York look as cool, threatening, or gothic as it does in this movie. It is amazing. My favorite moment, of course, is when Kevin Lomax walks out of a hospital and looks around and there is nobody there. That sequence alone is one of the coolest, most awesome sequences I've ever seen. Even the special effect, despite being from the late 90s, still actually holds up. Maybe because the fact is that they actually didn't have as much of it, so they could focus more on those small sections of special effects that they do have. And I would also like to add the fact that this might be one of the greatest adaptations that I've ever seen, because the book that The Devil's Advocate is based upon, it is a really shitty and uneventful book. So what is a great adaptation? To take a story and then transfer it very, very respectfully to the big screen with the help of great visuals, great casting and great writing, aka The Martian, which is exactly like the book and exactly how I imagined that the book would have been on the big screen. It's a fucking great movie. Or you take a story and you transfer it into something completely different and making the essence of the book or whatever it is into something completely new, aka Apocalypse Now to, The Heart of Darkness. Or is it this, where they take a mundane, pretty forgettable book and turn it into this? It is so much better than the book, to the point where I actually think that the book is one of the worst things I've ever read, and this thing is one of the best things I've ever seen. So, if you're in for a combination of The Firm, with Kevin Lomax being a bit similar to, Tom Cruise character in that movie, with, you know, the courtroom dramas and the cases and stuff like that, and Marianne's nightmarish things that she experienced and stuff like that. And if you think that this is a thing that you will like, I think you will absolutely love this movie if you've never seen it before. The movie has a weird timelessness about itself. It doesn't feel like, you know, a classical 90s movie. It feels like it could have been done both in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s. It could have been made today, god damn it. Even though the ending has the potential to cause more questions than answers, I still love it, and I still love the third act of this movie. The only thing I wish is maybe the fact that that section could have been even longer. And by the way, thank God there hasn't been any fucking sequels to this one. That would have killed this movie for me. The Devil's Advocate is a very unpredictable movie, and it goes through several stages, and all of it makes sense towards the end because everything matters. And it is one of my favorite movies from the fantastic year of 1997. And I give this movie 95 points. I love this movie from start to finish. I can quote most of this movie in my sleep. It is such a fun experience with this amazing gallery of characters that if you have never seen this movie before, I'm really sad for you and hope that you will see this movie one day and experience what I experienced, hopefully. But maybe I'm just wrong with this one. So I'll see you next time for, well, so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.